It's better if I enable my microphone. Welcome everyone, this is live from the studio. I'm with Chris Otchy today. That's going to be an awesome show. Let's launch the intro and I shall see you just after. Hello everyone, I'm with Chris Otchy. Chris, give me a second, I still have you muted. Here we go. How are you doing, Chris?
Really good. Hey, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. All right, let's get me started with the news. All right, set up everything. Here we go. All right, so everybody knows about my site, pitchymango.org. I would like to thank all my supporters which are on Bandcamp for helping me doing this show, making music. If you want to join it, $20 a year, that would be awesome. I just released a track called Breeze on the SoundCloud. What's special this track, I recorded in quad using the system that you just heard. And I use a Clarke plugin that encoded it in a stereo. But if you use the plugin again, you can decode it back into a quadraphonic sound. So that's interesting. It's a competition made by Dublab, Psychic. It just finished, and I saw there's like 25 entries or something like that. If you search on SoundCloud for "Make Music in Space," you should find all of the entries. It's quite awesome. Maybe I should give you the link in the chat. And if you could like and comment and give me feedback of this piece, that would be awesome. And also soon I recorded a video of it. I just processed it. I need to double check it and we should have everything. What did I see also? Tom Chill has released a new album. It's called The End in Buljovision. Please check it out. It's on Bandcamp. I've got also I saw a new release. I think it's from the label Ambientvibes. It's from HNOI. Here's a link. What else? Album You Don't Know. Here we go. What else also on the news? So we should have a Bandcamp on the first Friday of March. I'm not sure what date is it. We've got Resonant Frequency that was on the 3rd of January. They do that quarterly, but if you want to know more about Resonant Frequencies, here is a link. We've got Resident, which will be on the 9th of March at 8 p.m. I've already opened the registration. You can find the event on beimproviser.com, and if you want to sign up, you will find the forms there. We've got a Peak 19, which will be on Wednesday, 17th of Feb, so next Wednesday. And I just got the performers, so here is a Peak Live. So it will be featuring Mary-Ann Edonia and Steve McQuarrie. And finally, you've got Sonic Sunday, which is on the third Sunday of the month at 5 p.m. And let me give you also the link. It's on Twitch, and it's organized by Fez. All right, let's see who I've got here today. I've got Malarkey has got bad internet, so he's going to catch up on the show a little bit later. Carson is here. Hi, Carson. Benjamin Aizo. Sign Mountain. Sign Mountain will be the next guest on Live from the Studio in 2 weeks. So let's look for it for that. Since our music is here, Alphaster. Hi, Alphaster. Stefan Aronson also. The Peronosphora. And Kai Ote. Hello, welcome everybody. That's awesome for you to be here today. All right, let's go to my guest, which is Chris. So here's website. Let me change camera, and here we are. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing smashing, like on the Saturday morning doing the show.
I know we had quite a bit of rain here in San Francisco last night, but the morning came and cleared out, and it's just beautiful out there today.
Yes, I have some rain. It's starting to clear here, so
nice.
We are getting there.
Yeah.
So, Chris, always before I start, I remind people, don't forget to click subscribe, like, and also ask your question to Chris in the chat, and I will relay them to Chris. And that's also Robert Morris, Tech 15 join. Hi, Robert. All right, so Chris, who are you?
I am Chris Otchy. I'm a synthesist and an electronic music producer.
All right. So
that's me.
That's you. So how did you get into music?
Yeah, there's really two kind of formative experiences with electronic music specifically that I had kind of early in life that kind of formed who I became as an artist. The first thing was going to raves and going to clubs in the late 90s. I grew up in suburban New Jersey, not too far from New York City. And when raves started happening and some of my friends heard about it, going to check that out, like the entire scene just completely blew my mind. I mean, as a suburban white kid kind of coming into places where all genders and races and sexes are welcome and kind of coming together and celebrating electronic music and dancing all night long. I mean, that really kind of blew my mind and really impressed me with the power that music could have. The second thing I think that really affected who I became as an artist was when I was in college. I met this kid who became an acquaintance of mine, and he invited me to his house one time, and he was like, "This is a vintage synthesizer," and kind of introduced me to what really good synthesizers could do and could sound like. I think, after having this experience at raves and hearing that kind of like repetitive electronic music, the only thing that I knew that could create that kind of stuff was a little crappy like MC303 groove box from Roland that I had at the time. And I was, making little beats with that and sounds and stuff. But I would, listen to that and then listen to like, Frankie Bones and Adam X and like, all these amazing DJs that I was hearing. And I was like, this does not sound like that at all. And I couldn't figure out exactly why. And it wasn't until I met this kid who became like a very close friend and mentor for me, who introduced me to this world of like vintage synthesizers, that I realized like, oh, that's what makes it sound so awesome. So those are the kind of two things that kind of formed me into, in terms of my music tastes. Another thing was that this kid was really into new wave music. He was really into like OMD and Human League and Depeche Mode and that kind of stuff, which I had very little experience with up until then. I was really into like British rock bands and that kind of thing. So hearing this kind of like early-ish 80s electronic music, and this was like in the early 2000s, that kind of also like affected and kind of changed the way that I thought about electronic music. So those are the kind of two things that I think really formed my taste in music eventually.
Yes, indeed. And so I guess from the what do they call it, the boutique Roland, how did you get into modular synth?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The kid that I talked about who was really into new wave music, we formed a band and were like played a bunch throughout the kind of early 2000s all over the US. It was a band called Soviet. And we had a little bit of success and got to tour all over the place and like did the whole like rock band thing where you're like, you know, going from one town to the next. And for like 2 or 3 years, it was just that, straight that, like just not a lot of money, just kind of scraping by, like playing in shitty clubs all over the US. And that was awesome, but I totally got burnt out. And when that band broke up in like 2004 or so, I was like done with music. I completely abandoned music and left the country. I spent some time in Thailand and worked as a foreign journalist for a couple of years. And when I came back, I still like wasn't really into music that much. I moved to San Francisco and I met this guy in a sandwich shop here in San Francisco that was like, you know, we became friends and he was like, hey man, I see you have like similar taste in music to me. Like, I got to tell you about this thing that it's called the Octatrack and it's like really awesome. And just from talking to him, I was like, whoa, this is like luring me back into the world of music. So I got an Octatrack and that just kind of like reopened this whole like passion for electronic music again. And from doing that, I mean, when I got sick of music, I like sold all my synthesizers and everything else. I was like completely done. So the Octatrack was kind of the first thing that brought me back. And then from there, I was just kind of like looking on YouTube, like watching people perform and stuff. And that's when I first saw a system like this. And I was like, what the heck is that? And the kind of stuff that it lent itself to, I found as I started acquiring modules, was the kind of ambient music that I've been making for the past couple of years. So that kind of like is a long way of saying I kind of loved electronic music. I abandoned it completely. The Octatrack brought me back, and that also led me to modular.
Yes. Lenny Maker is asking if you can say who was this friend that you that brought you back to the music.
Who is it?
Lenny Maker is asking if you could say who was this friend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's this guy Keith Ruggiero. He's an amazing musician. He still makes he does soundtrack work now. He's in LA and does a lot of commercial advertising and music for feature films and stuff. He's amazing. One of my real influences and, as I said, a mentor.
All right. So as you were talking about, going into modular, how do you interface your Octatrack and the modular, and what do you like and what frustrates you about it?
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that I feel like I made early on in getting modular was that I thought it was going to be the end all be all. Like I was just going to do everything with modular from there on. And in fact, the first Octatrack I got was the Mark I. And once I got really into modular, I sold it. I was like, this is all I need. But the more I worked with it, I saw that it's really, really good at basically creating melodies and being almost like another artificial intelligence that you can interface with and have it do things, and it surprises you, and it's like really inspiring in that way. But it also can be a little bit, at least for me in my experience, it's almost like too much. Like it's sometimes kind of hard to control the chaos that it creates. You know what I mean? So I went back and got this is Octatrack Mark II, which I absolutely love. I think it's a huge step up from the Mark I. So much easier to interface with. And this, I feel like, gives me a base. It helps me to form a foundation, usually with beats and textures, that then I can kind of layer the controlled chaos of the modular over. So it's either going to be something where this is the bass and some of the melodies, and this is like some of the lead melodies, or I often use the Octatrack to loop what's coming out of here. So if this is just like a lot of random stuff, that's cool. But I like if you can loop it and hear it several times, it becomes less like chaos and more like something that could be a little bit more memorable, and it can create themes in your music, I think, a little bit more easily. So that's how I've been working with it too.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, with your Octatrack, you say you use a loop. Can you transpose it? Can you you say you're taking a sample of a loop? Can you process it with the Octatrack? I don't know well the Octatrack. I've seen
yeah,
using it.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's like, excuse me, you can take loops in there. First of all, it's got 8 tracks, and each one of those tracks can be a looper if you wanted, or any configuration of, some could be loopers, some could be playing back samples, whatever. But yeah, once you get a loop in there, you can process it with a couple. It has a couple of effect slots for each track, so you can affect it. You can pitch it down. You can have it go backwards. You can have it go forwards. You can have it automatically slice audio up and kind of reconfigure it, or just take it and kind of make it staccato. So there's a lot of processing power in this, and it kind of, Electron markets the Octatrack as a performance sampler, which is, I think, a really good description of it, because it is really fun to just do these things on the go, and as you're playing, and kind of take these things, and it has the power to process things and affect things really quickly. So it's a fantastic tool.
I see Carn Alex and Orta's going to join us. Hi. So,
hi guys.
You say you were in a band before, so how this experience is affecting you, inspiring you? How do you use this experience of being in the band to, I don't know, make music on Modular, or make music today?
Yeah, it's my friend Keith, who I talked about before, he's an excellent songwriter, and I think being with him and listening to how he uses synthesizers, which is very different from how I use them, really affected the way that I think about it, because he uses synths to create songs, like traditional songs, with like an intro and a verse and a chorus and a bridge and another chorus. Like he's really good at arranging things, and so working with him and seeing how he worked definitely affected the way that I think about music, especially now, because when I first got into using Modular, I was using it in a much more experimental way, in a much more free-flowing way. And I feel like ambient music having become very popular in the past couple of years, we hear a lot of that. There's a lot of people doing that more experimental stuff, which I love. It's great. And I've definitely made plenty of that kind of stuff, and I'm sure I will more. But I think the experience of being in the band early on kind of affected the way that I'm thinking about music now, because I feel like it's a different audience. I think the people that are going to listen to experimental music are not necessarily the kind of people that might listen to more traditionally structured music. I mean, people listen to both for sure, but I think your average music consumer on the street who's not a musician is probably going to be more likely to listen to traditionally arranged music than more experimental stuff and dance music, say. So
yeah, it's sometimes it's a process, getting in the experimental. Like I think I've started to hear some DJ that introduced dissonance, or who's the one that passed away recently, Sophie.
Yeah,
I didn't know about her. I listened a couple of tracks, and then I said, there's glitch, there's a little bit of experimental, but in a pop fashion. And sometimes these are bridged to bring into more experimental music.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And yes, I guess in the event that we are doing, we're doing event to come and listen to music, while sometimes you make music for people to dance or to be setting a mood in a room, in a restaurant, in a bar, in a club.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's really wonderful that people have created these forums for experimental music to really kind of grow and blossom. I mean, I feel like, say, when I was growing up in the 90s, finding this kind of music was a lot more difficult because you had to go to a record store and find the CD that was like maybe there or maybe not. Like I remember making lists of kind of obscure artists growing up and being like, where can I find, some Vangelis, and now I feel like it's a lot easier to find stuff, obviously with the internet, but also the internet has created this ability for communities like this one, of people, like-minded people to come together and celebrate less traditional music, I guess.
Yes, indeed. I wanted to slightly change topic, but it's still related, and we had the discussion before. You talk about finding your voice, and I think from the band. So I don't know, the band had the voice, and then know you're a standalone musician. So can you talk to us more about finding the voice? And I'll put the part of your blog where you've got Don Cherry. I'll paste that in the chat.
Cool. Yeah. Finding your voice is something I've really been thinking about a lot lately. I think like most people, like most musicians, I have a very wide range of interests when it comes to music. I love folk music. I love electronic music. I love, everything in between. And when I listen to, if you listen to somebody like Bob Dylan or Joan Baez or Ray LaMontagne, it's like within 5 seconds of hearing their music, and sometimes it's just a voice and a guitar or a voice and an acoustic, piano, you immediately know them. You immediately know who it is. They're very recognizable. And I find that it's a lot more difficult to be that recognizable or to make a statement so unique that your voice is distinctive when you're working with electronic music. That's arguable, but my opinion is when you're using, say, like sequencers and synthesizers, I think it's a lot more difficult to say something with your music that's quite as immediately distinctive, and I think do you want to watch that Don Cherry piece?
I don't know. There's a whole. I don't know. There's a TV documentary. It's like
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just summarize it. So
yes.
So there's a documentary that I linked to on my blog, and it's basically about Don Cherry, the American jazz musician. And there was a really interesting documentary made of him by Swedish television. I think it's in the 70s. And he talks about how when he was coming up and performing with Miles Davis, Eric Dolphy, John Coltrane, these jazz greats, how everyone, all the musicians in New York at the time wanted to be innovators, and being an innovator was like a really important thing. A lot of people were trying to do that. And he talks about how when he actually met those people who were innovators like Miles Davis and Coltrane, that they weren't trying to be innovators. They were just trying to push themselves to do something that was completely unique or push themselves to do something that they hadn't done before. And I kind of took a lot of comfort from that, because I was like, here's these guys that are absolutely amazing. And the way that they got there was by setting tasks for themselves to push themselves out of their comfort zone, right? It's like, you want to do something interesting. You want to make a great artistic statement. Maybe it's like setting yourself an impossible task and being like, I want to create a song that's going to be played on top 40 radio, that's kind of like ridiculous, but like it's pushing yourself to go beyond what you normally have done before. And I think that is the pathway to finding a unique voice and perhaps making something so distinctive that it is immediately recognizable, like, like a Bob Dylan song or something like that, you know.
Yes, and sometimes I have the feeling, like on the modular synth, when you start, why you don't know which module you have, so you ask a friend and say, oh, just buy that or something like that.
Yeah.
But as you progress and you start to have affinity with certain type of module and workflow, and I find it that you define what module you want, but at the same time the module start to define you and the style of music you're starting to make. And then after, I think it's a question maybe of work and work, perseverance, increasing your skill, and you started to build your sound.
Yeah.
But in the way of you process the sound, the format, the way you change the modules and what your ears are receiving. But yeah, it's very interesting for you to say that all these great musicians didn't try to be great. They were not trying to be unique, but they were just trying to hone their skills and push themselves, and they become great. But just by the work, and then but they were not necessarily to say, "Oh, I'm going to innovate. I'm going to do something new." It's
right.
a process.
Yeah, and I guess, like, to your point, there is something about the more time you spend with an instrument, the more you actually physically in a space with an instrument, the more like you almost start to breathe the same air, and you become so familiar with that instrument that it becomes an extension of you. I mean, I think that becomes very, very apparent when you're playing an acoustic instrument, because it's like it's in your, like a guitar, for instance, or something. It's in your hands, and the way that you express yourself with that can be very distinctive. And I think, to your point, I think that can happen with electronic instruments too. It just probably takes a little bit longer in honing that skill, like you said.
Yeah, there's a big part on the modular synth, which is, I think, sound design, and modular synth taught me to better understand what a sound is made of, and then you have to bring the melodic part, or adding the sound together. So that's two skills to start to acquire. But yes, the sound design takes a bit of time to get the right sound and the right texture, and understanding of how they are getting made sometimes. And sometimes
totally.
Sometimes you get just share, like you turn the knob and, oh shit, that's cool. But
right, yeah.
How did I do that?
How the heck did I do that? Yeah, exactly.
Can I do it again?
Is it reproducible? Yeah, exactly.
If I unpatch everything, can I redo it again?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beauties of modular too, is that it is like a completely, there's so much unpredictability there that it's so interesting that you can come back to your same rack 100 days in a row and make something slightly different if you patch things a little bit differently, and the way that the temperature of the room and how things are, like if the oscillators are tuning in the same way, and if they're the triggers are happening in the exactly same manner. It's interesting.
Yes. You think you found your voice?
I don't know. I think I'm continuing to just follow where my heart goes, and also push myself in the way that we had just discussed, being like setting goals for myself to be like, I want to create a song like this. I want to create a track like that. And I think that has kind of pushed me into a different direction. And I don't know if I've found my voice, but I'm working at it.
I didn't want to give you the answer to this question, but yeah, I think there's a Chris Otchy sound, and you're listening through your album, you recognize a certain type of a sound that you like and that you want to do.
Right on. Thank you.
And as you progress, I guess it will be more predominant, while maybe changing style. Sometimes it's interesting because you change style, but you still recognize the artist.
Right. Yeah.
You
totally.
change the tempo, and I don't know, you do an EDM, and then you do an ambient, but you still recognize the artist.
Right on. Yep. Totally.
It's interesting. sometimes I was I saw that Prince had a Tempest, had a Tempest, but he reprogrammed it completely, and then he had the drum kit for Tempest. That was the Prince one.
Yeah.
And then recently somebody released it. You listen to it, and then you go back to Prince song, and you say, "Oh yes, this is not a normal drum kit. You know, just small variation into a kick, but then this is Prince kick. You know, it's interesting."
Right. Yeah, totally.
I had a couple questions. So, peronosphora asks, what music equipment did you buy last year? Did you buy any?
Last year? Yeah, during 2020?
Yes.
I did. 2020, I think the biggest thing was the OP1. That absolutely, this has been my favorite new thing. I think it's a fantastic instrument. So fun to use. The tape function on it is just next level, like so fun and cool. This is like basically always on my desk now. So yeah, I got that and love it. I did get the Octatrack Mark II last year at some point. And I got after getting this and like realizing how much I really do love Electron products, I got a Digitone as well.
Okay.
So.
And Lenny Ameka is asking, so your music is coming from an emotional or intellectual perspective, or both? You know, what's your thought process when you create a song?
It's very, I think it really depends on how I approach it. Like if I wake up and I'm like, I just want to do something modular and I just start plugging stuff in, that ends up being quite an intellectual pursuit, because I'm really like, how can I get these modules to interact with each other in a way that is cool and pleasing to me? And that way it's very much a practice of just like finding what I want. I'm searching for the right kind of sounds. But if I'm doing something, usually with the Octatrack and the OP1, it ends up being a much more emotional experience, because I'll start with, say, a drum loop or some percussive stuff, and then I'll start playing on the keys, and I'm looking for an emotional hook within what I'm playing. So it really depends on the tools that I'm using and the approach that I'm taking that day.
Yeah, I see. And Alphaster is making a nice comment, you know, that your voice continuously evolve, you know, as you progress.
It definitely does. Yep.
So we are about half past, and that's usually when I start to put your performance. I'm just checking everybody who's on the chat. I see Interphone is here. I don't see other people.
What's up, Interphone? What's up, man?
Interphone will be after Sign Mountain, so in about a month on this show.
Cool.
All right, so about your performance, you want to introduce it, or we launch it and talk about it after?
Yeah, I think just launch it and we'll talk about it after. I think it speaks for itself.
All right. And I remind people, don't forget to check Chris Otchy website. Don't forget to click subscribe, like, you know the drill. And now is Chris Otchy. Wow, that was really awesome. Thanks, Chris. That was a really cool
Thank
track.
you.
So,
Cheers. Thank you.
I saw some people during the track commenting, and I see I don't know, Lenny say you really needed that type of music, today to cheer him up.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to play on here.
Yeah, no, it's and I don't know, it's my every other Saturday meetup with everybody on the chat on the show.
Yeah.
And, yeah, no, that was really really cool. So yeah, Kote. I don't know if I say it. Hold That Gun. Lenny Brumata, Synth Music. So Sign Mountain also. Peronosphora. Oh, Peronosphora, yes. What? Already done? Okay, looks like you need to. The long version needs to be a longer version.
Yeah.
Carson was here, Benjamin Iso. So nice to have all of you here. Carson was so asking, he wanted to hear more about your approach to using pad in this track, and he had the feeling that you had put a little bit more attention to, or you put more attention to details on the pads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love pads, and I think one day I want to get one of those sweet synthesizers that's like really good for pads. But for now, I've really been using samples and things that I can kind of take out of the OP1. The pad that I use in this one it's really interesting. I mean, it was like seriously like a 3-second chord sound, but putting it in here into the Octatrack, I was able to, the Octatrack has a really cool ability to kind of modulate samples. So it almost sounds like a tape starting and stopping, that kind of like that kind of effect. It can do that really cool in the Octatrack. So I put it in there and looped it. The 3 seconds were looped, and then that kind of like modulation was kind of randomly put on it. So that kind of created the vibe. And once I discovered that, everything else kind of just fell into place. But you're right. The pads are really important. I love pad sounds, and that one I did spend a little time on to get that texture.
That's cool. So back to inspiration and finding your voice. So what was the inspiration for this track? How did it come about?
Yeah, this one, I was kind of just going through samples that I had on the Octatrack, and like I said, the first thing when I heard that pad and realized that I can loop it and kind of manipulate it in that way to create that kind of sonic texture, that was the first thing I was like, ooh, that's cool. I like that. And then I was kind of searching for drums, and once I heard those particular drums that the drum loops that I selected, once I heard them going underneath that pad, the thematic melody just like came to it. It just jumped out at me. I was like, oh, okay, that's how it's going to work for sure. That's going to be the theme. So the theme, I recorded that sample into the Octatrack, so that was kind of like the chorus part. And then for the verse part, I was, as I created that theme, I heard a bunch of variations on that theme as I was kind of playing on the OP1. So I thought, okay, this could be a cool thing. Have this kind of, the thematic bit be like the chorus, and then the verse will be kind of live performing variations on that and looping those variations and kind of manipulating them. And then the second part of the kind of like second movement, I was like, that's where the modular is going to come in and kind of do what modular does. So it was kind of going between the verse and chorus and then figuring out where the modular would best fit into the whole composition.
All right. And Lenny was asking, so, what was your feeling, emotion in this piece? Or what kind of emotion you are trying to convey?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like it's very hard for me to put that into words because it's like a feeling that I have. And when I'm listening, like I said, I was listening to the chords and listening to the drums, and the feeling, the emotion kind of came through that melody. But it's hard for me to actually put words to what that emotion is. It's just like the feeling that I had. And I think that's like part of what we do as artists, right? It's like, it's all about synthesizing the, I want to say gray matter or dark matter, the unconscious, you know. It's like we're taking all these experiences that we have going around the world, all the frustrations that we have, the anger, the sadness, the joy, and that kind of just ekes out of us somehow as melodies and as musical textures. So I can't say exactly where it came from, but I guess it just came from playing around, and it expressed something that I was feeling on some level, you know. And like I said, that's kind of what we do as artists, is synthesize our experiences.
Yeah, it's when I try to perform, or I'll do a performance live even when I record, you know. So first the research, and I've got a mood, and I'm researching a piece, and then I'm going to rehearse it more, like knowing all my transition, and you know, if I turn this knob, what does it do? Okay, you know, learning all the parts so that I'm not getting surprised when I move something. I know what is going to produce, and then when I perform it, I try to forget all this technology and just be here in the moment, and just trying to convey an emotion, or just, I don't know what my emotion is, but you know, whatever I'm feeling right now is what is driving me to change things in the piece. And I know what they are doing, so that technical part is away from me now. And that's interesting, you know, to have the same, you know, approach of, you know, you made the track and then you know what it is, and but after, you know, or you get this unconscious surfacing.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mean, this is another kind of
your voice journey that you have is like, you are. Do you come to the instruments with something, with an idea, or are you coming and then finding something there? Either way, it's like, if you're coming and finding something there, it's like the reason that is interesting to you is because it resonates on some level, I think, right? It's like you play something and emotionally or intellectually, you hear it, and it kind of resonates inside you, and that's why you decide to, you know, get behind it and create more stuff around it, and eventually, you know, release it into the world.
Yes, indeed. When we were preparing the you know, the show, you gave me a couple of topics. So the one of finding your you know, finding your voice is a awesome one. There was a couple of them also. I guess maybe it's you know, with your experience in the band and now as a solo artist, you know, how can you share that? You know, what's a mistake that you've made as an artist?
Yeah, mistakes. I would say the first mistake. Well, I'll say the most recent thing that I think is what I alluded to earlier, of getting the modular and thinking that was going to do everything for me. I'm going to do drums with this. I'm going to do melodies. I'm going to do bass. I'm going to do everything with the modular. I think that was kind of a mistake for me in the beginning, because I now see that I know what the modular does well, and I use it for that. But I think there's a place that it can kind of sit amongst all your other instruments. And this does something really well, I'm going to use it for that. This does something else really well, I'm going to use it for that. So kind of seeing where the modular sits, or any of your instruments sit within your kind of spectrum or artist's palette, is really important. One of the other things that I did early on in my career, I think, as an artist, that really was kind of a huge mistake, was back in the days when I was in that band. We all were just, you know, young and so hungry, and we wanted to succeed so much in music that I think we just took ourselves way too seriously. And honestly, like, that is one of the worst things you can do, I think, because it just becomes like everything is riding on this moment, everything is riding on this performance, everything is riding on whether or not this album does, this well. And it's like, if you're grasping onto everything in that way and you're so serious about it, sure, there's merits to being serious, but I think having a little levity, not taking it so seriously, will allow you to kind of like succeed and not be so crestfallen if things don't go exactly your way.
Yes, and I think you need to show your personality, and
Yeah,
you need to
yeah,
be able to reach to people. And I don't know, I had this discussion a couple of days. There's a music part, and then there's what I call it the business part, and that needs to be taken care, and you shouldn't mix the two together.
No, that's a great point too. Is like the balance of how much time do you spend in your week creating music versus how much time do you spend marketing it? You know what I mean? Like, and because unless you are like you reach that threshold of success where you do have like a PR team or like a label behind you that's going to do all the marketing for you, we as independent artists kind of have to like figure out the balance of doing that and how much of each are you going to do. And that's a struggle in and of itself, and has really not very much to do with how much you love music and love playing with your instruments or whatever. It's like, how business savvy do you want to be about your artistic career? And that's a big question I struggle with all the time.
And also, so how do you see the difference? Like, with the COVID, we have been home. How do you see the difference between performing live and, I don't know, maybe recording an album, and maybe also DJing? How do you see this?
Yeah.
What's your approach?
It's become so fluid. I feel like especially when you're talking about like DJing versus performing live. I mean, there's like the very basic thing of like, okay, if you're performing live, everything is coming out of your instruments. And if you're DJing, you're playing somebody else's music and just putting it one track in front of the other, and maybe there's a little mix between them. But I think if you look at really good DJs like, Carl Cox, Richie Houghton, like these individuals who have taken DJing to another level and are, very celebrated for that, it's like what they're doing is almost more like using DJ decks as instruments. They're taking like a drum loop from here and hats from over here and like the melody of this, and they're EQing it together and playing it all at the same time. And that to me feels almost like it's almost comparable to doing what we're doing with a straight up, instrument. It's extremely creative. So, excuse me. I don't know. This is another thing that I've been really struggling with a lot, is like, especially because if you don't have a very large system, I feel like unless you're extremely creative, it's really hard to play for more than 15, 20 minutes with a system, say, this size, without being able to go someplace else with it. And that's where I feel like samplers and some pre-recorded bits really come in handy, because then you can perform something and then you can really switch the vibe up by doing something else, and then maybe go someplace different. So to me, like, the difference between DJing and performing is becoming increasingly blurry. I don't know. What do you think the difference between the two is?
Yeah, I think you start DJing, which is basically putting the right track that fits the mood of the room at the moment. So there's all this emotion that you're doing, and then you see the top DJs are producing more and more, and then the barrier is blurry, because if you have a top DJ, then they are going to play their tracks, so they are producing tracks.
Right.
They record albums, they've got all the stem, and then they are going to re-render them for the public because they know about it. Yeah. And I don't know, somebody like Deadmau5 has got a modular synth, and that's how he creates his track that he will DJ.
Yep.
A kind of a loop. So yeah, that's interesting. Also, yes, I still haven't found the formula like to have like just only 2 tracks that don't sound the same. On the
Mhm.
same modular. You need to repatch on the fly and or do something like give me 2 minutes. I'm repatching my gear. Uh,
Right.
uh, that's difficult. The
It
way
is.
I've been trying to approach the like 30-minute part is I'm trying to have within my 30 minute. No, I'm trying to have piece of like 2, 3, 5, 6 minutes in it. So I'm trying to like every 5 minutes or so make a transition so that I can cut it and say that will be my track 1, track 2, track 3. So you can play continuously, but at the same time you've got a little piece of 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important because I've seen a lot of performers recently where they are playing just long periods of time, just doing using a limited amount of instruments, and it just gets boring. I think everyone's trying to do their best, but you got to also like think about the listener and think about the audience, and like so I think that's actually a great approach that you described. Have about 4 or 5 minutes, 6, 7 minutes, whatever, and then switch the vibe, go someplace else. I think that's really important to kind of keep the audience's
Yeah,
attention.
yeah, or maybe like you've got many voice on your modular, and then it's don't bring them all together all the time, and create
Right.
part. This
Yeah.
part will have this voice, and then after it will be, I'll mute it for the rest of the performance.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Or I'll bring it differently. No, that's interesting. And
Yeah.
as we were talking about, I don't know, the DJ and the electronic music. So, what are your influence? American electronic music, European electronic music. What do you feel?
In terms of
What's
influences,
influence and how do you feel? What's the difference between American and electronic music? Is there such a thing
I
in a
think
globalized world nowadays?
it's funny. Yeah. In terms of artists, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between them. I think artists, American artists, and European artists and Asian artists, artists, African artists, artists from all over the world, they're doing their thing. But in terms of audiences, I think there is a slight difference. I feel like I don't know. I feel like European audiences traditionally, I guess, are a little bit more. I feel like electronic music is a little bit more. Not in the mainstream, but it's a little bit more known in Europe. I think that's kind of the traditional thought. Whereas in America, electronic music was never as kind of widely accepted as it is in Europe. So I don't know. That's my general thought. I mean, what do you do? Do you distinguish? Do you think there's a difference in European and American audiences?
Uh, I don't know. I remember, you know, acid house and industrial music. More or less coming from Europe. I don't know with um, Jar, Tangerine Dream, seeding the sounds in Europe. But it's interesting because the instruments are coming from the US or Japan,
Right. Yeah.
but the great tradition of experimental music, has got a European base.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like what is it? Boulez, Bauhaus, and all these kind of early artists that were trying to play. There's a base here also that was interesting in San Francisco. With Morton and Morton Subotnik, Raymond, and
The whole like Tate Music Center and the history of like it's
I'm trying
amazing.
to remember Pauline Anderson. I think that's
Pauline Oliveros, totally.
Olivero. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing the history. I really did not know too much about the history of electronic music. I mean, how much San Francisco was a part of how experimental electronic music kind of developed until I lived here and kind of like started reading about these things. But yeah, it's pretty amazing, like how much stuff has happened in the Bay Area.
Yeah, like I did a quick timeline. There was the like FM synthesizers was created here, and then you got great manufacturer that that are still here or used to exist. Like well, you've got Sequential with here,
Yeah.
but the Santa Cruz one, EMS.
Yeah, that's based in Santa Cruz.
Yes, it used to be based in Santa Cruz.
What? I did not know that. That is amazing.
And yeah, I think there was maybe a couple of other, or like Oberheim was here before going to Los Angeles. You've got Lean also with a Lean drum. So it's interesting. There's a cluster here, but it doesn't feel that. And then there's a Moog cluster on the East Coast, and it doesn't feel that it spreads really in the US.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's interesting.
It is.
Alpha say American audience are fair weather fans for the most part. European and Japanese fans are rabid for music.
Well said, definitely. Yeah.
That's interesting. We passed the top of the hour, so wanted to talk a little bit more about your project and your album.
Sure.
I'll post the link of your Bandcamp.
Cool. Thanks, man.
So people can see your album. Let me change a little bit also, and also you've got one album with Ambientologist label.
Yeah. I worked with Ambientologist on my last album, which is called Recursive, and Ambientologist is doing some really cool stuff right now. They've putting out a bunch of really good music. A couple guys from Amsterdam, I think they're in the Netherlands, and they're putting together a bunch of really interesting artists and putting out some really cool music. So I was really happy to be asked to be put to put my last album out with them, and then my most recent album, Merlin's Voice, is out now. Spotify, Bandcamp, check it out. It's kind of like I feel like I am kind of moving in this direction. For the first couple of years I was making music. Most recently, I was putting out a lot of ambient stuff, which I still love, but I feel I'm kind of gravitating and moving towards this more kind of beat-oriented kind of place. I've been interested in kind of tangential stuff to ambient music recently, and so exploring those realms right now.
Yeah, and Merlin's Voice was released last month.
Yes, it was.
Brand new. So, what are the projects? Know that this one is out of the, know that this one is out. What's your plan?
Like I was saying, I think I really am interested in seeing where. I mean, I'm really interested in these tangential realms around ambient music that use a lot of the same kind of cool atmospheres and dreamy tones and textures, but kind of take it into a new direction. Like I love like dreamy pop music. I love psych. I love dub. I love atmospheric techno, and I feel myself kind of moving into some of those realms that are a little bit more have a little bit more traditional structure. But still have a lot of that dreaminess and kind of cool textures. So I think that's kind of where I'm headed. I have a bunch of stuff recorded right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to release it right away because I just put out an album, but I kind of want to see where this next, kind of hump of like creativity goes and see what comes out of that. And then probably maybe I'll release something else later this year.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm going to redo the news.
Cool.
I'll remind people, I think, I don't know, somebody come from Periscope, Twitter. I saw also Brumata joining and said that, I don't know, the conversation was helpful to them. So that's cool. So I'm going to go back to the news. Also, I want to remind people to subscribe and like. And if you're a modular synth artist and you want to be on this show, please reach out to me. I'm always looking for new artists, and you know, you don't need to be well known. It's interesting also to see everybody in their different stage and process, and you all feel welcome here. So if you want to be on this show, please reach out to me. All right, let's go back to the news, and then after I'll give you the word for the end. Okay, I need to swap these things. There we go. All right, so pitchymango.org, that's my website. You can read about all the news, the concert. As I say, I put there's a concert and event, so you can see all the upcoming live stream for live from the studio and whatever event I do. I want to thank all my supporters on Bandcamp. If you want to support me, please do that on Bandcamp. That would be really awesome. You can buy the music, but becoming supporter, you get access to all my music, plus all the release that are not yet full release. I released a track which is called Breeze on the SoundCloud. This is a quadraphonic encoded in stereo, and if you download the track and use the Clarke plugin, you can get back the quadraphonic sound. So that's interesting. It's part of a competition. There's like 20-30 tracks also. If you look on the SoundCloud Make Music in Space, you should find them all. I saw Tom Gill has released a new album, so please check it out. I saw also that Eshenoi has also released a new album, and Intan Fan, which see on the chat, also made a new album. Also, that's the new album this week. We have got Bandcamp Friday coming in March, on the first Friday of March. We've got Resonant Frequency, which is every quarters. It's also an open mic going live, so you can see the past show and watch out when the announcement will be for the next one. We've got Resident that will be on the 9th of March, and the event and sign up form is on beimproviser.com. So here I've got the link. So if you want to know about it, and you can already put the reminder on the YouTube show. Like you can put the reminder on the next show, which is with Sign Mountain on my site. So once you finish, go there, put the reminder for Sign Mountain. And I've got Peak, which is on Wednesday 17th, so next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And the performers will be Marianne Edonia and Steve McQuarrie. And Sonic Sunday with Fez. That's my co-conspirator for running Resident. So it's on Twitch and Sonic Alliance. Alright, so I'll put back Chris' main page, and I'll give you the link. Oh, and the last one that I should give you is that we've got a Discord server for Left Coast Light. This is our local community of artists, and here is the invite if you want to join and carry on the discussion and ask questions to all of us and know about Modular. Even if you're not an artist but a fan, be part of the community and support all these awesome artists. All right, let's go back to Chris. Maybe I'll put this one. Here we go. And that was awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us and doing this show. It should be on the replay immediately once it finishes. If you have got, if you are watching it not live like Malarkey, who had that problem with his band, his internet, please post comment into the show. Tell me in the comment which artist I should feature, what went well, what did you learn. Let me know what you think about the show in the comments. So Chris, your word for the end, and I'll launch the outro.
Thank you so much for having me, Frank. I really appreciate your letting me share the stage here today, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right, awesome. So next show is with Sign Mountain. It will be on Saturday 27 at 11. Thanks everyone. Coming back. Thank you everyone for showing up today. That was really awesome.
Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care.